I knew something was wrong the moment I walked into that conference room. The faces around the table told me everything I needed to know before anyone spoke a word. 3 years of dedication, countless overtime hours, and what I thought was mutual respect had led to this moment. The CEO sat at the head of the table, his expression a careful mask of corporate disappointment. His son Marcus lounged in the corner, picking at his fingernails with the kind of bored indifference that only comes from never having to face real consequences. The project had failed spectacularly. 3 months of development work gone. The client presentation that was supposed to secure our biggest contract of the year had become a disaster when our entire code base mysteriously corrupted overnight. The CEO needed someone to blame, and I was the obvious choice. Lead developer, project manager, the person whose name was on every technical document. These things happen in corporate environments. Someone has to be responsible when millions of dollars evaporate. What they didn't know was that I had been preparing for this moment longer than they realized. My background in software development started 15 years ago, back when debugging meant actually understanding every line of code rather than relying on automated tools. I had worked my way up through 3 different companies, always the person they called when systems failed, always the one who stayed late to fix what others had broken. This company had recruited me specifically for my reputation in crisis management. They needed someone who could handle complex enterprise applications, someone who understood both the technical and business sides of software development. The irony wasn't lost on me that they were now questioning that same expertise. Marcus had joined the company 6 months earlier, fresh out of college with a computer science degree and an attitude that suggested he already knew everything worth knowing. Nepotism in family businesses isn't unusual, but it creates interesting dynamics when the owner's son decides he wants to contribute to critical projects. I had tried to guide him, to share the kind of practical knowledge that only comes from years of real-world experience. He seemed more interested in implementing what he called modern solutions, approaches that sounded impressive in theory, but ignored the established architecture we had spent years building. The morning of the failure, I had arrived early as usual. My routine included checking system logs, reviewing overnight automated processes, and ensuring all backup procedures had completed successfully. Everything appeared normal. The codebase was intact, all recent commits properly documented, no unusual system activity reported. By 10 a.m., when the rest of the development team arrived, I was already deep into final preparations for the client demonstration scheduled for that afternoon. Marcus had come in around 11, which was typical for him. His father had made it clear that traditional corporate hours were suggestions rather than requirements for family members. I noticed him at his workstation, but paid little attention. My focus was on the presentation demo, making sure every feature worked flawlessly, every transition smooth, every potential client question anticipated with a perfect response. The client meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. At 1:30, I pulled up the demonstration environment to run through everything one final time. The error message was something I had never seen before. File corruption across multiple directories, database connections failing, entire modules reporting as missing or damaged. 3 months of work had become gibberish overnight. The timestamps on the corruption were all between midnight and 2 a.m., hours when no scheduled processes ran, no automated updates occurred, no legitimate reason existed for anyone to be accessing these systems. The client meeting became an exercise in professional embarrassment. We postponed, claiming technical difficulties that would be resolved shortly. The CEO's face during that conversation told me exactly how shortly my employment would be lasting. The investigation that followed was swift and decisive. System logs showed my access credentials had been used during the corruption timeframe. My workstation showed recent activity in the affected directories. Every piece of evidence pointed directly to me as the source of the failure. The fact that I had no memory of accessing anything during those hours, that I had been home sleeping like any reasonable person, seemed irrelevant to the investigation. Corporate IT security pulled my access logs, interviewed my colleagues, reviewed my recent performance evaluations. Everything painted the picture of a dedicated employee who had never caused problems before, but the evidence was clear. My credentials, my workstation, my responsibility. The CEO delivered the news personally, expressing disappointment rather than anger, suggesting that perhaps the pressure of the project had been too much, that these things happen when people are pushed beyond their capabilities. I accepted the termination with what I hoped appeared to be appropriate professional dignity. No arguments, no emotional outbursts, no desperate attempts to explain what I knew to be true. I simply nodded, gathered my personal items, and left the building with the same quiet efficiency I had brought to every project over my 3 years there. What I didn't mention during that meeting was the security system I had been quietly documenting for months. My background in systems administration had taught me to pay attention to access patterns, to notice when things didn't align with established procedures. Marcus's irregular hours had caught my attention early in his tenure. Not because of any suspicion, but because unusual access patterns always warrant monitoring in secure environments. I had begun keeping informal notes about system access during off hours, partly from professional habit and partly because his father had asked me to mentor him in proper security protocols. Those notes had become more detailed over time. Marcus had a habit of staying late when no one else was around, claiming he did his best work without distractions. His access logs showed frequent late-night and early morning sessions, often in directories where he had no assigned responsibilities. When I had mentioned this to him in casual conversation, he had laughed it off as exploration, curiosity about how different parts of the system connected. Learning experiences, he called them. I had also noticed his frustration with what he termed legacy code, the established systems that form the foundation of our applications. He frequently advocated for complete rewrites, modern frameworks, approaches that would essentially replace everything we had built with newer technologies he had learned in school. When these suggestions were declined in favor of maintaining proven systems, his enthusiasm for the project seemed to diminish significantly. The week before the failure, I had implemented additional logging on my workstation, not because I suspected anything specific, but because some recent access patterns had seemed unusual. Files opened at times I didn't remember opening them, directories accessed when I was certain I had been working on completely different tasks. Small inconsistencies that individually meant nothing but collectively suggested someone else had been using my credentials. Those logs were still running when the code-based corruption occurred. The day after my termination, I received a call from Janet Morrison, the company's chief technology officer. She had been my strongest supporter during my time there, someone who understood the technical complexities of what we were building and appreciated the value of experienced developers. Her voice carried a tension I had rarely heard before. The project failure had triggered a comprehensive security audit. The client had demanded explanations before considering any future business relationship. The CEO was facing pressure from the board to demonstrate that proper procedures were in place to prevent similar incidents. Janet had been tasked with conducting a thorough investigation of all system access during the critical time frame. She asked if I would be willing to meet privately to discuss some inconsistencies they had discovered. We met at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory away from corporate politics and family dynamics. Janet looked tired, the kind of exhaustion that comes from discovering things you wish you hadn't learned. She explained that the deeper investigation had revealed several troubling patterns in the system access logs. My credentials had indeed been used during the corruption timeframe, but the usage patterns didn't match my typical behavior. The access sequences were wrong, the directory navigation inconsistent with my established workflows, the timing completely at odds with my documented work schedule. More significantly, there were physical security considerations that didn't align with the digital evidence. The building's keycard access system showed that I had badged out at 6:15 p.m. the day before the corruption, my normal departure time. There was no record of me returning to the building that evening or early the next morning. The parking garage security cameras confirmed my car had left and not returned. Yet somehow, my system credentials had been actively used for over 2 hours during the critical period. Janet had spent considerable time analyzing these inconsistencies before reaching an uncomfortable conclusion. Someone else had been using my credentials. Someone with physical access to the building and knowledge of internal systems. The list of people who met those criteria was very short. She asked if I had any theories about who might have had access to my login information. I shared my observations about Marcus's access patterns, his late-night sessions, his familiarity with my workstation area. I mentioned the additional logging I had implemented and offered to provide those records if they would be helpful to the investigation. Janet's expression grew more troubled as she realized the implications of what I was describing. The investigation took on new urgency when Janet reviewed the additional logs I provided. They clearly showed unauthorized access to my workstation during times when I was not in the building. Sessions that coincided exactly with Marcus's documented late-night presence in the office. The evidence painted a picture of systematic credential theft and deliberate sabotage disguised to implicate me. Janet faced a delicate situation. The evidence strongly suggested that the CEO's son had deliberately destroyed the project and framed me for the failure. Presenting this information would require careful navigation of family dynamics and corporate politics. She needed irrefutable proof before making such serious accusations. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Building Security had recently upgraded their camera system, installing high-definition recording equipment throughout the office areas. The new system captured much more detail than the previous setup, including clear views of individual workstations and computer screens. Janet requested security footage from the critical time frame, ostensibly to verify that no unauthorized personnel had accessed the development area. The footage revealed everything. Marcus appeared on camera at 11:40 p.m., using his key card to enter the building when the access logs showed no other employees present. He proceeded directly to my workstation, spending several minutes accessing systems using credentials that were clearly not his own. The camera angle was perfect for capturing his screen activity, showing him navigating through project directories with obvious familiarity and deliberate intent. The most damaging evidence came at 1:20 a.m., when the footage clearly showed Marcus executing the deletion commands that corrupted the entire codebase. The camera captured his face as he worked, showing concentrated focus rather than accidental confusion. This was not a mistake or misguided exploration. This was deliberate sabotage carried out with full knowledge of the consequences. The footage also showed Marcus accessing additional systems to plant evidence, suggesting I had been responsible for the corruption. He modified access logs, adjusted timestamps, and created a trail of digital breadcrumbs designed to implicate me while concealing his own involvement. The level of premeditation was remarkable for someone who had claimed to be simply learning the systems. Janet faced the challenge of presenting this evidence to the CEO without destroying the family relationship that complicated every aspect of the situation. She scheduled a meeting with him for the following morning, requesting that he review the security audit findings before taking any additional action regarding the project failure. The CEO's reaction to the footage was exactly what you might expect from a father discovering his son's betrayal of the family business. Shock gave way to anger, then to a kind of resigned disappointment that suggested this was not the first time Marcus had created serious problems. The professional implications were clear, but the personal cost was devastating. Marcus was terminated immediately, though the official reason given was budget restructuring rather than the criminal misconduct the evidence clearly demonstrated. Family businesses handle internal scandals differently than public corporations. The priority was containing the damage rather than pursuing justice through formal channels. Janet called me that afternoon with an apology and an offer. The company needed an experienced developer to rebuild the corrupted project. The client was willing to extend their deadline if proper security measures could be demonstrated. My reputation and expertise made me the obvious choice to lead the recovery effort. The terms she offered were significantly better than my previous position, reflecting both an apology for the wrongful termination and recognition of the value they had nearly lost. I accepted the position with appropriate professional gratitude, though I insisted on implementing additional security protocols to prevent similar incidents in the future. These measures included enhanced access logging, mandatory two-factor authentication, and regular security audits of all development activities. The CEO approved these requirements without hesitation, having learned the cost of inadequate oversight. The project reconstruction took 6 weeks. Working with a clean slate allowed me to implement improvements that had been impossible within the previous timeline constraints. The final product exceeded the original specifications in both functionality and security. The client presentation went flawlessly, resulting in the largest contract in the company's history. Marcus never returned to the technology industry. The last I heard, he had moved to another state and was working in his father-in-law's real estate business. Some career transitions are voluntary, others are the inevitable result of burning bridges in a remarkably small professional community. The incident taught me several valuable lessons about workplace security and family business dynamics. Trust is earned through consistent behavior over time, but it can be destroyed in a single moment of poor judgment. Technical expertise means nothing without proper character, and positions of privilege carry responsibilities that some people are not prepared to handle. I also learned the importance of maintaining detailed documentation of unusual activities, even when they seem relatively harmless. The logging system I had implemented as a precautionary measure became the foundation for proving my innocence and exposing the real culprit. In technical environments, everything leaves traces if you know how to look for them. The company culture changed significantly after the incident. The CEO became much more involved in day-to-day technical operations, asking detailed questions about project security and access controls. He instituted regular reviews of all employee access patterns, making it clear that family relationships would not protect anyone from accountability for professional misconduct. Janet was promoted to Chief Operating Officer, partly in recognition of her thorough investigation, and partly because the CEO needed someone he could trust to oversee all technical operations. She implemented company-wide security protocols that became a model for other organizations in our industry. The incident had transformed from a near disaster into a catalyst for significant operational improvements. My relationship with the company evolved as well. The wrongful termination and subsequent vindication had created a level of mutual respect that might not have developed under normal circumstances. The CEO understood that he had nearly lost a valuable employee due to family bias and inadequate security procedures. I understood that even the most professional environments can be complicated by personal relationships, and that protecting your reputation requires constant vigilance. The restored project became a showcase for our technical capabilities, leading to additional contracts and industry recognition. Trade publications wrote articles about our security protocols and development methodologies. The near disaster had transformed into a competitive advantage through proper response and systematic improvement. 6 months later, I was promoted to Director of Technical Operations, with responsibility for all development projects and security protocols. The position came with equity in the company and a seat on the Technical Advisory Board. Sometimes professional setbacks lead to opportunities that would never have emerged under normal circumstances. The security footage that had revealed the truth was preserved as part of the company's incident response documentation. It served as a reminder that in technical environments, the truth usually emerges eventually, regardless of attempts to conceal it. Systems keep records, cameras capture activities, and digital evidence is difficult to eliminate completely. Marcus's actions had been motivated by frustration with established systems and a desire to prove himself through dramatic intervention. Instead of building something new and impressive, he had chosen destruction disguised as accident. The psychology behind such decisions is complex, involving pride, entitlement, and a fundamental misunderstanding of how professional environments function. His father never discussed the personal impact of discovering his son's betrayal, but the changes in his management style suggested the incident had affected him deeply. Family businesses require careful balance between personal relationships and professional responsibilities. When those boundaries become blurred, the consequences can be severe for everyone involved. The client relationship that had nearly been destroyed became one of our strongest partnerships. They appreciated the transparency we demonstrated during the crisis and the improvements we implemented in response. Sometimes acknowledging problems honestly and taking corrective action builds more trust than never having problems in the first place. The technical community is smaller than most people realize. Word spreads quickly about both successes and failures, particularly when they involve dramatic circumstances like sabotage and wrongful termination. My vindication became known throughout our professional network, enhancing my reputation for both technical skill and professional integrity under pressure. Looking back, the incident taught me that workplace politics and family dynamics create complex challenges that require careful navigation. Technical expertise alone is not sufficient for career success. Understanding human nature and organizational behavior is equally important. The ability to document activities systematically and present evidence clearly can be more valuable than any programming skill. The company continued to grow and prosper, becoming a leader in our industry segment. The security protocols we implemented became standard practice, copied by competitors and recommended by industry consultants. The near disaster had transformed into a competitive advantage through proper response and systematic learning. I remained with the company for 3 more years, during which time we expanded into new markets and developed innovative solutions that set industry standards. The incident that had nearly ended my career became the foundation for some of my most significant professional achievements. Sometimes the worst moments create opportunities for the greatest success. The most important lesson was about the value of preparation and documentation. Technical professionals must always be ready to defend their work and prove their competence. In environments where politics and personal relationships complicate professional decisions, having clear evidence of your activities and contributions is essential for protection and advancement. The security cameras that captured Marcus's sabotage had been installed for routine building security, not to monitor employee behavior, yet they provided irrefutable evidence when it was needed most. In today's digital world, most activities leave some form of record. Understanding how to create, preserve, and present that evidence can determine the difference between career destruction and professional vindication. 5 years later, I established my own consulting firm, specializing in technical security and incident response. The experience of being wrongfully accused and subsequently vindicated gave me unique insights into workplace investigations and evidence preservation. Many of my clients were professionals who had faced similar challenges, needing expert analysis to prove their innocence or demonstrate their value. The consulting business grew rapidly, built on referrals from satisfied clients and recognition in professional publications. The incident that had nearly destroyed my career became the foundation for building something much larger and more significant. Sometimes being pushed out of your comfort zone forces you to discover capabilities you never knew you possessed. Marcus's story serves as a cautionary tale about privilege, responsibility, and the consequences of poor judgment. His actions affected not only his own career, but also the livelihoods of everyone who worked on the project he destroyed. In professional environments, individual decisions can have far-reaching consequences for many people. The CEO eventually sold the company to a larger corporation, achieving the kind of financial success that had been his goal throughout his career. He recommended me to the acquiring company's leadership team, ensuring that the transition preserved the technical capabilities and security protocols we had developed. Professional relationships built on mutual respect and proven competence tend to endure long after formal employment arrangements end. The incident also reinforced my belief in the importance of ethical behavior in technical roles. Software developers have access to systems and data that can cause significant damage if misused. This access comes with responsibilities that extend beyond technical competence to include professional integrity and sound judgment. Today, when I speak at industry conferences about security protocols and incident response, I often share the story of how security footage revealed the truth about a project failure. The audience reaction is always similar: initial shock at the audacity of the sabotage, followed by appreciation for the systematic approach to uncovering evidence and achieving vindication. The story resonates because many technical professionals have faced similar challenges with workplace politics, family dynamics, or wrongful accusations. The key lessons about documentation, evidence preservation, and professional response apply broadly across different industries and situations. Sometimes people ask whether I harbor any resentment toward Marcus or his father for the trauma of wrongful termination. The answer is honestly no. The incident taught me valuable lessons about human nature, organizational behavior, and the importance of systematic preparation. Those lessons became the foundation for greater professional success than I might have achieved without that catalyst. The security footage that revealed everything became more than just evidence of misconduct. It became a symbol of how truth eventually emerges in professional environments. Technology creates permanent records of our activities, and those records can protect the innocent while exposing those who abuse positions of trust. The experience also demonstrated the value of allies like Janet, who was willing to investigate thoroughly and present uncomfortable truths despite potential personal and political costs. Professional vindication often requires someone with the courage to challenge authority and pursue evidence wherever it leads. In the end, the incident that began with betrayal and false accusation concluded with professional growth, enhanced reputation, and career advancement. Sometimes the challenges that seem most devastating become the experiences that define and strengthen our professional character. The security footage revealed everything, including the truth that competence and integrity ultimately prevail over politics and privilege.